Inner city nerds. You flew over here talking tough, now learn the map. Gold state talk, state line talk. Diversity metals.
Justice fund. No funny shit in the facts.
So which state's really with the madam? We're talking law, not cosplay.
Listen close and keep up.
I got the grip, Oklahoma on code. Arkansas in the mix, Wyoming cold gold. Alabama talk heavy, Louisiana too. Idaho stand firm, Missouri came through. Diversity metals with the weight that's tangible truth. Justice fund, moving value with the long game proof.
That state with a spine, don't blur that list. These ain't move board bars, that statue with a twist. Texas on deck, Florida next in line. If you stay too funny, go somewhere else to shine. Diversity metals, baby, I like substance in the room. Justice fund rails make the weak framework doomed.
So you're telling me the map got pressure by design? Some states hold value, others just print and wine.
Exactly, one side got specie in a legal tort lane. Other side still married to a paper thin chain. One side got the metals, one side got excuses. One side but with justice fund, one side stay useless.
One side with the clothes, one side with the feet. One side plan legacy, one side big and bleed. I'm from that reap before you leap, and not hear what they say. You can't call it sovereign if the rules all drift away. I like diversity metals, baby, that's way with class. Not some polished little promise that evaporate fast.
Say it slower, I'm catching, but I want it precise.
Utah, Oklahoma, they've been standing on the right.
Arkansas, Wyoming, more spine in the frame.
I'm Louisiana.
Respect on the name. Idaho, Missouri, they ain't soft in the text. Texas, Florida, warming up. To the weak states next.
Justice fund in motion. That's the bridge for the set. Diversity metals in the ball. It's as real as it gets. X means move, baby. Not just complain online. Baby, laws don't fit the future. Don't get left behind. I don't date weak framework. I don't flirt with collapse. I like a state with a backbone and a lawful map. Yeah. And if you talking metals, talk diversity to me. If you talking real, then just fun better be the key.
So when you say Goldback, you mean law with some teeth.
Not fairy, that's Brandon.
With a speech and a reef.
Not glitter in a brochure.
Not a picture I can skip. I mean, can a rule hold weight when the paper gets thin? Can the assets solid when a loud room fold? Can diversity metals still prove what the gold is?
Gold is not just another commodity. Gold is the oldest financial asset. It's been around for millennia. And up until 1971, it was a currency. We went off the gold standard in 1971. And what tokenized gold actually makes possible is a return to a digital gold standard, and a standard that is opt-in. So it's up to you, and it doesn't involve any central banks whatsoever. What we will have is a situation where the monopoly on fiat currency will be broken. So when fiat loses its monopoly, then we need to step back and think about inflation. Inflation is purely a fiat monetary phenomena. So once you replace the fiat or provide competition for the fiat, then the concept of inflation is completely different.
Welcome back to the Gold Exchange Podcast. My name is Ben Nadelstein of Monetary Metals. I'm honored to be joined by Dr. Campbell Harvey. Dr. Harvey is a professor of finance at Duke University and a research associate at the National Bureau of Economic Research. He's the former president of the American Finance Association and a former editor of the Journal of Finance. His latest books and his latest research on decentralized finance, tokenized gold, and real-world assets is so cutting edge. We needed to have him on the podcast, and here he is. Dr. Harvey, welcome to the show.
Thank you for inviting me.
Dr. Harvey, I want to start with a tough question. Over the weekend, there were strikes on Iran, and tokenized gold was trading 24/7. That's one of the benefits of tokenized gold, while older exchanges like the COMEX were actually closed. And what happened was the gold price on these tokenized exchanges was effectively predicting Monday's opening price, but with a little bit of a premium. So, Dr. Harvey, are we watching the birth of a new digital gold standard?
Yes, so this is the fascinating idea with tokenized gold. And gold is not just another commodity. So gold is the oldest financial asset. It's been around for millennia. And up until August 15th, 1971, it was a currency. So we went off the gold standard in 1971. And what tokenized gold actually makes possible is a return to a digital gold standard, and a standard that is opt-in. So it's up to you. And it doesn't involve any central banks whatsoever. So I think it's fascinating to have another medium of exchange, another store of value that can be easily used. And there's so many advantages here. You mentioned one of them. So the strike on Iran, it was announced in Israeli media at about 1:13 a.m. Eastern time. And then the president announced on social media at 2:30. And you can see at 1:13 a.m., the tokenized gold price, which is available 24/7, 365, traded on multiple venues, both centralized exchanges and decentralized exchanges, the price starts to surge. So while COMEX was sleeping, we've got an active market for those that needed a safe haven asset, but the traditional exchanges were just not available. Tokenized gold actually played its role. And yes, you're also correct. Very good at predicting the price at the open for the futures. Just to be clear, the futures trades 23 hours a day, but only 5 days a week. So it's very limited on one venue. Tokenized gold trades on multiple venues around the world. It is available at any time. The last thing I'll mention is you mentioned a premium. And this is fascinating to me, and it's something I didn't know before I undertook this project, that the Paxos token, which is PAXG, PAXG, it trades at a premium to spot. So there's another gold token out there, XAUT, which is the Tether token. It doesn't trade at a premium to spot. It's really close to spot. So what is going on? And I've thought about this deeply, and in finance and economics, we sometimes call this a convenience yield. So that means that it's available all the time to trade. And it's not constrained by banking or exchange business hours. It is available all the time. Now, that explains a premium, but it doesn't explain the premium over the Tether token. And just by the way, I have no conflicts of interest on this whatsoever. So nobody is paying me as a consultant. I'm an academic, and I'm curious. So if you look at these two tokens, they are different in a number of dimensions. So number one, the Paxos token is warehoused by Brinks in London. And Brinks, this firm that has been around forever, it's got a great reputation for security. Whereas the Tether tokens are in a nuclear-proof bunker in Switzerland. And actually, before this research, I didn't know that Switzerland had 250,000 of these hardened bunkers in their country. So I've got one of them. So it's a bit different in terms of the custody. But importantly, Paxos is registered, the trust company is registered in New York and fully regulated by the New York Department of Financial Service, which is a very high reputation regulator known for being tough. And that's exactly what you need in this space. The Tether token is not regulated in the US. It's effectively offshore. It's not traded on any central exchange in the US, whereas the Paxos token is. And then I'll mention the third difference, which might be the most important in explaining the premium. And this is that the Paxos token has got what's known as bailment. So let me take a step back and talk about kind of the stable coins in general. So one issue with the stablecoin issuers, let's say like Circle. So we send Circle our US dollars, they send us a token, and then the collateral that we've sent actually is invested in treasury bills and reverse repos. We can see it. But what if Circle gets into trouble? They do something else. They make a bad acquisition or something, and they go bankrupt. Well, it used to be that the token holders are just another creditor. You're just in line. So the Genius Act, what it did was it put the token holders number one in line. So they're the first claimants. And this makes the token a lot less risky. So the same thing could hold for the gold tokens. But Paxos has this ingenious idea called bailment. So bailment is that when you get the gold token, you are actually, it is backed by a specific gold bar, the serial number on that bar. So you've got ownership in that bar. So if Paxos went bankrupt, well, you've got ownership of that bar. So it's a very strong legal protection. So again, this is very exciting. My paper, Tokenized Gold, we have this event that happened after we put the paper out to the public. We quickly updated the paper to incorporate the analysis as to what happened over the weekend, where you've got a major geopolitical event happening when traditional exchanges are closed.
Dr. Harvey, do you think that this decentralized finance where people can trade 24/7, there might be this more liquidity, there's all these benefits to these tokenized gold projects compared to more centralized exchanges or traditional finance? Do you think that over time that these decentralized financial institutions will overtake these standard or traditional financial institutions, and gold being kind of the spearhead asset for this?
So let me put this in perspective, and this is important. Before 2009, everything was centralized. So we depended upon the banking system and traditional exchanges. And 2009 was when the first Bitcoin were produced. And this is truly a decentralized technology. So using blockchain technology, it is a peer-to-peer technology. Now, that said, the trading that actually happens in two forms. One form is with a centralized exchange. So think about Coinbase as an example of that, or Binance. So that means the same thing as if you're trading equities, so stocks. You've got a broker. The broker actually holds the stock in the broker's name. Now, at any point, you can request the stock be moved into your name, but it's in the broker's name at the brokerage. So with cryptocurrencies, it's the same thing at a centralized exchange that you are delegating, you are trusting the exchange or your broker with the private keys. Again, at any point, you can repatriate your crypto, but you're trusting a centralized player. So as soon as you do that, then we've got this kind of mix of decentralized finance, which is the actual token itself, and centralized finance, which is the broker that you need to trust. So it is identical for a tokenized asset that is a real world asset. But there's another dimension to it. So it's identical in that we can trade tokenized gold on a decentralized exchange. And that is, it's a what I call peer-to liquidity pool sort of transaction. You can do that at any time. Liquidity is constant through the day or the week or the year. Or you can trade it on a centralized exchange. So you've got those two options.
Let's just start with this one number today, right? 70%.
Yeah, that's a staggering figure.
It really is. Like right now, based on the stack of research and economic data we are doing a deep dive into today, 70% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck.
Right.
Which means, if you miss just one single pay period, the vast majority of people out there cannot cover their basic overhead.
They literally do not have $1,000 in liquid savings.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And usually we frame this as a personal responsibility thing, right? Like we say to you, the listener, oh, you just need to budget better, or, skip that morning coffee.
Right. The classic avocado toast argument.
Yeah, exactly. But the sources we're unpacking today suggest something entirely different. They argue that the sister itself is functioning exactly as it was designed to.
Yeah.
Like it's a treadmill where you have to just sprint to avoid moving backward.
I mean, it is a systemic feature. It's not a bug at all. When you operate entirely within a fiat monetary system, you're dealing with a currency that is explicitly engineered to depreciate.
Right.
Because inflation is often talked about as this invisible, unavoidable weather event, right? Like rain.
Like it just happens to us.
Exactly. But it actually functions as a highly regressive, completely hidden tax on your time and your labor.
Wow.
You work for a week, you store that labor in fiat currency, and the purchasing power of that stored labor immediately begins to degrade.
I was actually trying to visualize this earlier. If you imagine your wealth, like your life savings, as something physical.
Right.
We want it to be a diamond.
Right.
You put a diamond in a safe, you come back 10 years later, it still has the exact same mass, the same structure, the same edges.
It fundamentally holds its shape.
Right. But our current financial system, this fiat system, it's like handing someone a melting ice cube and telling them, hey, this is your life savings.
That's a great way to put it.
Because no matter how tightly you grip it, or, no matter how securely you lock it in a massive commercial bank vault, it's losing volume.
Yeah.
The puddle of water around it is getting bigger, and the cube itself is just shrinking.
And that shrinking forces a very specific behavior from you.
What do you mean?
Well, if you know the ice cube is melting in your hand, you are forced to take it and throw it into riskier and riskier investments just to try and outpace that melt rate.
I see.
You put it in the stock market, you put it in highly leveraged real estate.
Right.
You take on risk, not necessarily because you want to be this aggressive, Wall Street investor, but because holding cash is a guaranteed mathematical loss over a long enough timeline.
Wow.
Fiat currency is fundamentally designed to be a short-term medium of exchange, just a way to settle a transaction today. It was never intended to be a multi-generational store of value.
Which really brings us to the core mission of this deep dive, because we have this massive stack of proprietary transcripts, highly technical white papers, business plans, and expert interviews today.
Yeah, some really heavy-hitting stuff in here.
Including some fascinating research from Dr. Campbell Harvey of Duke University. And we are looking at a completely different paradigm today.
A total shift.
We're exploring how ancient wealth, literally physical gold and silver, is being merged with cutting-edge smart contracts and ironclad commercial law to fund modern businesses.
Yeah, to completely bypass the traditional commercial banking system entirely.
Exactly. But before we get to the complex smart contracts, we have to look at who is already playing this game.
Right.
Because you pointed out in notes earlier that the largest players on Earth do not hold their wealth in melting ice cubes.
Oh, they absolutely do not. I mean, if you look at the balance sheets of multinational energy conglomerates.
Or big oil.
Yeah, the massive oil and gas companies exploring for resources globally, they provide a perfect case study in capital preservation.
Okay, how so?
Well, these companies go through massive cycles, right? They have periods of huge productivity where they're stockpiling enormous cash reserves. And then they have periods where they need to deploy billions of dollars to acquire new land or mineral rights.
And I think most people would just assume Exxon or BP has a checking account with $10 billion sitting in it, ready to wire to whoever's selling the land.
Oh, man. That would be incredibly reckless management of shareholder capital.
Really?
Yeah. The executives detailed in our sources are actually on the record explaining that they would never store vast multi-year reserves in fiat currency within the traditional banking system.
Because of the melt rate.
Exactly. The inflation bleed over 2 or 3 years would be catastrophic.
Wow.
So instead, when they accumulate excess capital, they cycle it into physical gold. They use gold as the ultimate long-term storage medium.
It's the diamond.
It is the diamond. And then when a multi-million-dollar acquisition is finally finalized, there is often a deliberate built-in 30-day delay before the closing date.
Wait, so they're intentionally slowing down a multi-billion-dollar deal. Why?
Because they need that 30-day window to meticulously liquidate portions of their gold reserves back into fiat currency to actually execute the transaction.
Oh, I get it.
Yeah, they use fiat to buy the land, but they use gold to store the wealth while they wait to buy the land.
That's brilliant.
They're constantly jumping back and forth between the two systems. Fiat for the transaction, gold for the preservation.
Okay, so the kings, the sovereign nations, the mega corporations, they all use gold to protect their wealth.
Right, and that's been true for centuries.
But for a normal person, someone just trying to start a business or save for a house, dealing with physical gold is an absolute logistical nightmare.
Oh, it's terrible.
Like, you can't buy groceries with a gold bar. You can't exactly chop it up with a hacksaw and email a fraction of it to pay a supplier. The friction is just way too high.
And that friction is the singular reason why the average person abandoned sound money and just accepted the melting ice cube.
Because of convenience.
Convenience, exactly. But that dynamic is undergoing a violent shift right now, and it's being driven by the concept of tokenized gold.
Okay, so this is where Dr. Campbell Harvey comes in.
Right, Dr. Harvey from Duke University.
Yeah.
And he is a heavy hitter in this space. He's the former president of the American Finance Association.
Wow.
Yeah, and he argues that tokenization fundamentally solves this friction problem. It strips away all that logistical nightmare and creates an opt-in digital gold standard.
I really want to focus on that phrase, opt-in.
Yeah.
Because historically, a gold standard was something a government decreed, right?
Yeah.
The government said, our paper is backed by gold.
Right.
And then in 1971, the U.S. government just said, hey, never mind, it isn't anymore. And the citizens just had to accept it.
And that is the crucial distinction here. A decentralized, tokenized gold standard does not require a central bank's permission.
Right.
It doesn't require some sweeping legislative act. An individual can simply decide they are done participating in the depreciation of fiat.
They can just opt out.
Exactly. They can convert their labor into digital tokens that represent audited physical gold.
And the mechanical advantages over the traditional financial system are massive too. Let's look at that concrete example from the sources regarding trading hours.
Oh, yeah, this is fascinating.
Because if I want to trade gold traditionally, I'm probably looking at the COMEX futures exchange, right?
Right, COMEX.
But COMEX operates on banking hours. It trades roughly 23 hours a day, but only 5 days a week. It totally shuts down for the weekend.
Which is such an antiquated concept. I mean, global geopolitics, military conflicts, macroeconomic shocks, and then they don't politely pause at 5:00 p.m. on a Friday.
No, they definitely don't. And we saw this play out perfectly recently.
Yeah.
There was a weekend where a major geopolitical event occurred. I think it was military strikes involving Iran.
Right.
The news hit the wires at roughly 1:13 a.m. Eastern time on a Saturday or Sunday.
Dead of the weekend.
Exactly. And if you were holding a traditional portfolio and wanted to flee to the safety of gold because, a war just started, you were staring at a locked door. The COMEX was closed. You couldn't make a move.
But the tokenized gold markets operate on blockchain infrastructure.
Right.
Meaning they are active 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year.
So they never close.
Never. So when that news broke at 1:13 a.m., the data shows that tokenized gold prices began reacting instantly.
Wow.
Volume spiked, and the price surged in real time as individuals and algorithms just reacted to the geopolitical risk.
It was the only place to trade.
Exactly. The tokenized market became the only active price discovery mechanism on the entire planet for that asset.
And what happened on Monday?
Well, predictably, when the traditional COMEX finally opened its doors on Monday morning, its opening price violently gapped up to match exactly where the tokenized market had already priced the asset over the weekend.
The traditional market literally had to catch up to the reality that the tokenized market had already processed.
Yet the tail was wagging the dog.
But, we have to make a very clear distinction here because not all digital gold is the same.
Oh, absolutely not.
Dr. Harvey points out this really fascinating pricing discrepancy between two of the biggest gold tokens out there, Paxos Gold, which trades under PAXG, and Tether Gold, which is XAUT.
Right.
They both claim to represent 1 exact ounce of physical gold. But if you look at the charts, Paxos consistently trades at a premium over the actual spot price of physical gold, while Tether trades right at or sometimes even slightly below it.
Yeah.
Why in the world would I pay more for Paxos if it's the exact same amount of metal?
So you're paying for a concept called the convenience yield combined with regulatory security.
Okay.
The convenience yield is basically the mathematical premium that investors are willing to pay for instant liquidity and that total lack of friction we talked about.
Yeah, the 247 access.
Exactly. But the divergence between Paxos and Tether specifically, that comes down to the legal and physical reality of where that gold actually lives.
Okay, so break that down for me. Where is the Tether gold?
So Tether stores its physical gold in high security, nuclear-proof bunkers in Switzerland.
Sounds secure.
It does, but it is entirely offshore. It is explicitly outside the regulatory umbrella of the United States. Paxos, conversely, operates as a fully regulated trust company under the New York Department of Financial Services.
And New York regulators don't mess around.
No, they don't. The NYDFS is infamous in the financial world for being one of the most stringent, aggressive regulatory bodies on earth. And Paxos stores its gold in centuries-old Brinks vaults in London.
So part of the premium you're paying with Paxos is just people paying for the peace of mind that a vicious New York regulator is constantly auditing the books to make sure the gold is actually there.
Exactly.
But Dr. Harvey highlights an even bigger differentiator, and it's this legal term, bailment.
Yes, bailment.
I honestly had to list this up when I was reading the notes for this deep dive.
Bailment is arguably the single most important concept in asset protection, and it is honestly terrifying how few people understand it.
Well, explain it to us.
Let's look at the alternative first. When you deposit your fiat paycheck into a traditional commercial bank, or when you leave your cryptocurrency on a standard centralized exchange,
Like FTX or something.
exactly, you are legally classified as a general creditor.
Let's pause right there because that term, general creditor, it sounds super benign, but it really isn't.
Not at all.
If I put $10,000 into my local bank, I open my app on my phone, and it says my balance is $10,000. That money is mine, right?
Legally? No.
Really?
No, you actually loaned the bank $10,000.
Wow.
The bank now owns that money, and they owe you a debt of $10,000. That is exactly what being a general creditor means.
So what happens if they fail?
If that bank goes bankrupt, your $10,000 gets thrown into a massive pool with all the other assets the bank holds. The bankruptcy court then looks at all the people the bank owes money to, and you just get in line.
You're just a number on a spreadsheet.
Exactly. If the bank only has enough assets to pay out 50 cents on the dollar, you only get $5,000 back. You do not own the money. You own an unsecured claim against a failed institution.
That is genuinely horrifying when you say it out loud like that. We treat banks like they're safety deposit boxes, but they're actually investment funds that use our deposits as their collateral.
That's a perfect way to describe it.
So how does bailment change that dynamic?
Bailment is the legal equivalent of the safety deposit box. With a true bailment structure, like the one Paxos utilizes, you are not loaning them money.
Okay.
You are hiring them to store your specific physical property. The digital token you hold in your wallet actually corresponds to a serialized, audited bar of gold sitting in a specific vault.
Wait, like a specific serial number?
Yes, you legally own that physical bar. Paxos is merely the bailee. They are just the custodian.
Meaning if Paxos completely implodes, goes bankrupt, and, the CEO flees the country.
It does not matter to your asset. Really, the bankruptcy court cannot touch your gold bar to pay off Paxos's creditors. It is simply not their asset to liquidate. Your legal title to that specific physical property remains absolute. You simply walk in, present your cryptographic proof of ownership, and you take your gold back. That absolute legal segregation of assets is what commands that price premium.
I mean, I definitely understand the legal superiority of that, but I have a fundamental issue with this entire setup.
Okay, what is it?
If we are talking about the revolutionary power of decentralized finance, right? DeFi, blockchain, trustless networks.
Right.
Why are we suddenly relying on Brinks vaults, Swiss bunkers, and New York regulators? Aren't we just taking this beautiful decentralized technology and bolting it right back onto the centralized legacy institutions we were trying to escape?
Yeah, that is the central philosophical tension of tokenizing real-world assets.
Just seems like a step backward.
Well, look at pure cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin. They are brilliant because they are natively digital. There is no physical Bitcoin in a vault somewhere. The cryptographic ledger is the asset itself. But the moment you decide to bridge a real-world tangible item onto a blockchain, whether that is a gold bar, a barrel of crude oil, or a deed to a house you slam into the physical reality of the world.
You can't hash a house.
Exactly. You can't put a gold bar into a USB drive.
Right.
Someone has to guard the gold. Someone has to maintain the roof of the house. Someone has to independently verify that the gold bar is actually 24 karat gold and not just tungsten painted yellow.
So centralization is required.
Therefore, a centralized custodian is not a flaw in the system. It is an unavoidable physical necessity. The goal of this ecosystem is not to eliminate physical custodians. The goal is to use blockchain technology to force those custodians to be perfectly transparent, instantly auditable, and globally accessible at the speed of light.
And if we actually achieve that, Dr. Harvey suggests the macroeconomic consequences are just mind-bending.
Oh, they're massive.
He speculates that if tokenized sound money assets become highly liquid and widely adopted by you and me, it could completely strip governments of their ability to quietly tax their populations through inflation.
Yeah.
If I can get my paycheck instantly seamlessly routed into tokenized gold that I can then spend on a debit card, the government's melting ice cube becomes completely irrelevant.
He even posed this really wild idea that in 50 years, fiat inflation might be viewed as a museum exhibit.
A museum exhibit?
Yeah, like an archaic historical curiosity. You would literally have to explain to future generations that there used to be a system where a centralized committee could just print trillions of units of currency and silently siphon away the purchasing power of your hourly wage.
It sounds utopian, but, here's the massive roadblock we have to address today.
Okay.
Tokenized gold, even with that bailment protection we talked about, is fundamentally static. It preserves wealth perfectly, but it doesn't build wealth.
That's true.
If I have a tokenized gold bar in a vault, it's just sitting in the dark. If I want to take that wealth and put it to work, if I want to lend it out, lease it, or use it as collateral to fund a small business, I run into a wall that pure blockchain technology cannot bypass.
You run into the legal system.
Exactly. And that takes us to the absolute core of today's deep dive. We have to talk about the Justice Fund Exchange, the JFE, and this concept that I am frankly obsessed with, algorithmic jurisprudence.
Yeah, to grasp why the JFE was built, you have to understand the fundamental language barrier between the blockchain and a physical courtroom.
Let's walk through a scenario for the listener. Let's say I use a standard decentralized finance platform, right? I lend you $100,000 in crypto, and you lock up some digital tokens as collateral in a smart contract.
Okay, pretty standard to DeFi setup.
Everything is governed by code.
Yeah.
But then there's a bug. You find an exploit, you completely drain my funds, and you default on the loan. The smart contract completely failed to protect me. My money is gone. I'm angry, so I find out who you are in real life, and I take you to a physical court. I stand before a real-world judge. What happens?
The judge looks at you and asks for your perfected legal claim.
My what?
Your perfected legal claim. They ask for the signed, notarized documentation establishing your actual security interest in the collateral. And if all you have is a printout of an Etherscan transaction showing a cryptographic hash, the judge is going to dismiss the case.
They don't care about the blockchain.
A physical court of law cannot and will not execute a remedy based on anonymous, unperfected computer code.
So the whole idea that code is law, which gets thrown around in the crypto space all the time, is completely false the second you step off the internet.
It is entirely false. Code is only law within the closed loop of the software. In the physical world, commercial law statutes, uniform commercial code filings, perfected liens, that is law.
And this is where the JFE comes in.
Exactly. The Justice Fund Exchange was engineered to be the universal translator between those two realities.
How is it different from normal crypto?
Well, unlike typical crypto networks that are open and permissionless, where anyone can create an anonymous wallet, the JFE is a highly gated, heavily regulated, closed-loop environment. Its sole purpose is to convert legal, real-world claims into liquid digital tokens that a judge will actually recognize.
And the engine running that translation is algorithmic jurisprudence. I mean, it sounds like a term from a cyberpunk novel What does it actually mean in practice?
It is the literal encoding of traditional physical commercial law into deterministic smart contracts.
What kind of law?
We're talking about legal principles that have been refined over centuries of global trade. The concept of perfecting a lien, the strict legal timeline for issuing a formal notice of default, the authorized execution of asset seizure. These are no longer left to lawyers arguing in a conference room.
They're in the code.
They are explicitly written into the code. The software cannot execute a financial transaction unless the corresponding legal requirement has been mathematically satisfied.
So you aren't trying to replace the legal system with a blockchain. You are forcing the blockchain to submit to the legal system.
That is the perfect way to phrase it. And to achieve that submission, the JFE relies on what the white papers call a tri-pillar ecosystem.
Tri-pillar, 3 pillars.
Right. There are 3 distinct, specialized entities that work together to make a digital transaction legally bulletproof. Let's examine each pillar.
Let's start with ARISA. ARISAI. This is the notarial and arbitral intelligence pillar. I read this as sort of the ultimate digital ledger.
Yeah, think of RSI as a digital civil law notary. Now, a civil law notary is very different from the person who stamps your car title at the local bank, right?
Oh, really?
Yeah. In many jurisdictions, they are highly trained legal professionals responsible for verifying the absolute truth of a transaction. RSA does not hold the physical gold, and it does not run your background check. Its only job is to maintain the global asset registry.
So it just records things.
It hashes the legal documents, notarizes the smart contracts, and creates an immutable time-stamped record. It ensures that every single digital token has a perfectly corresponding, legally notarized document attached to it.
Okay, so RSI is the master record keeper. The second pillar is Complete Chain Guard, or CCG, the regulatory pillar.
CCG is the automated bouncer at the door.
The bouncer.
It is an unfeeling compliance engine. Before RSI is allowed to notarize a transaction, CCG must independently verify that all real-world regulations have been completely satisfied.
Meaning what, practically speaking?
Meaning it runs the anti-money laundering and know your customer checks. It verifies your actual real-world identity. And crucially, it interfaces with government databases to ensure that UCC1 financing statements have been properly filed.
Let's pause on that. You mentioned UCC1 earlier. What actually is a UCC1 filing? If I'm just a regular person who buys index funds, I've probably never seen one.
The Uniform Commercial Code, or UCC, is basically the standardized set of laws governing commercial transactions in the United States. A UCC1 financing statement is a legal form that a creditor files to give public notice that they have an interest in the personal property of a debtor.
Give me He is the biometric retinal scanner and metal detector at the front gate.
Oh.
It doesn't care about your feelings. It only cares if your security clearance matches the database.
Spot on.
And AFINET is the actual vault, the concrete walls, the armed guards, and the legal title to everything inside.
That analogy holds up really well. And understanding that tri-pillar structure is vital because it highlights the massive trade-off the user is making.
What's the trade-off?
When you operate inside the JFE, you must completely surrender your anonymity.
Right.
You cannot hide behind a pseudonym like you can on regular crypto networks. You are fully identified, vetted, and bound by commercial law.
Which crypto purists absolutely hate.
Oh, they despise it. But in exchange for giving up that anonymity, you gain something infinitely more valuable if you are trying to conduct serious business. Ensured legal certainty.
You actually have protection.
You know that if the person on the other side of the trade defaults, you aren't going to be left holding a worthless piece of code. You have a perfected legal claim, backed by a real-world fiduciary, insured by a master policy, and enforceable in a physical court.
Okay. We have built the bridge. We've taken the physical gold, put it in the AFINET vault, passed the CCG background checks, and notarized it on the RSA ledger. The asset is perfectly safe.
Yep, safe as can be.
But it is still just sitting there. A gold bar behind a heavy steel door does not produce a monthly income. You can't fund a startup with a static piece of metal unless you sell it, which completely defeats the purpose of holding it.
Exactly. Safety and liquidity are often opposing forces, which is why the ecosystem introduces a financial engine to sit on top of this legal bridge.
Right, the protocol.
This is the Aureum Custodia Finance Protocol, the ACF.
The sole purpose of the ACF protocol is to take that dead, static asset in the vault and turn it into a dynamic, yield-generating instrument without ever moving the physical metal.
Exactly.
And the way they do this relies on a mechanism called the synthetic leaseback instrument.
The SLBI. It's built on a very established legal and economic principle called bifurcation.
Bifurcation?
Yeah. Bifurcation is the act of splitting an asset's properties into two distinct legal branches. In this case, we are permanently severing the physical ownership of the sound money from its economic utility.
I want to make sure this is crystal clear for everyone listening. So let's use real estate because people understand leasing a house.
Good idea.
If I own a commercial warehouse, I hold the title, the concrete, the roof, the dirt underneath it that physically belongs to me.
Yeah.
But I don't use the warehouse. I lease it to a logistics company. They park their trucks there. They store their inventory. They generate revenue using the utility of the building. In exchange for utilizing my asset, they pay me a monthly lease premium. I never sold the building, but I am extracting continuous liquid yield from its existence.
That is the exact mechanism of the synthetic leaseback, but applied to precious metals. The warehouse, in your analogy, is the physical gold or silver sitting in the AFINET vault.
The sources specifically detail the use of goldbacks and silverbacks for this collateral. I went down a massive rabbit hole looking at these silverbacks, specifically the Hades edition mentioned in the notes.
Oh, they are visually stunning.
They're incredible. They aren't clunky bullion bars. They are hyper thin, flexible notes that look almost like paper currency, but they are printed on 1/1000th of a troy ounce of pure silver.
Right, vacuum deposition.
Yeah, they are functional art. The Hades edition features the Greek god of the underworld, symbolizing the earth where the metals are born. They have strictly limited mintages, a blue border edition limited to 50,000, and a graded purple border elite edition limited to under 1,000 pieces.
So they have intrinsic metallic value, but they also carry massive numismatic collectible value on top of it.
So imagine you own a portfolio of those Hades silverbacks. They are locked securely in the AFINET vault.
Yeah.
You retain absolute legal title. The physical ownership is fiercely protected by the bailment structure we discussed.
Right.
But through the ACF protocol, you lease out the economic utility of that silver into the digital market.
Yes.
Wait, I have to stop you. I understand leasing a warehouse. You can put physical boxes in a warehouse.
Mhm.
What does it mean to lease the utility of a silver coin? What is the person leasing it actually getting to do with it?
They are leasing its power to act as pristine legal collateral. Yeah. In the complex world of commercial finance, having an over-collateralized, perfected legal asset allows you to issue digital tokens, secure massive lines of credit, and underwrite insurance policies.
Okay, I think I'm following.
The lessee, the entity paying you the premium, is utilizing the verified legal weight of your silver to back their digital financial activities on the network. They use your silver's strong balance sheet to secure their own operations.
Got it.
In return for letting them borrow that financial strength, they pay you a continuous liquid yield.
Okay, that makes sense. I am renting out my financial credibility. But that introduces a glaring, terrifying risk.
What's that?
If I lease my warehouse to a tenant and that tenant goes bankrupt and stops paying rent, I lose my yield. I have to evict them. In this system, if the human lessee simply stops paying their digital lease premiums, doesn't the whole thing collapse? Aren't we just relying on the creditworthiness of a random stranger on the internet?
In traditional crypto lending, yes, that is exactly what happens. The borrower defaults, the protocol panics, and it instantly liquidates the collateral. It sells your silver at market price to cover the debt.
Right, which is terrible.
It is a ruthless, often systemic vulnerability, but the ACF protocol is designed to never rely on the human variable. It manages this risk through two distinct layers: mintable value and the ultimate safety net.
Let's break down mintable value first, because this dictates the math of the whole system.
Mintable value is a hard-coded mathematical governor on the smart contract. It strictly limits how much digital liquidity can ever be issued against the physical asset.
Okay.
The formula states that the maximum mintable value is the lesser of two numbers, either the verified coverage amount of the attached insurance policy or a heavily risk-discounted 85% of the physical metal's real-time market price.
So if my silver in the vault is worth exactly $100 on the open market, the absolute maximum digital value the protocol will ever let someone utilize is $85.
Correct. There is a permanent, mathematically enforced 15% physical buffer. This ensures the system is always over-collateralized. Even if the price of silver experiences a sudden drop, the underlying physical value still exceeds the digital debt.
But over-collateralization doesn't solve the problem of a missed payment. If the lessee ghosts the protocol, I still need my yield.
Which brings us to the most innovative aspect of this entire architecture: the priority waterfall and the fiduciary triggers.
Okay, here we go.
This is where the legal bridge of the JFE actually flexes its muscles.
The sources outline a $100 million master life insurance facility underwritten by Lloyd's of London. Lloyd's of London is not a DeFi startup. They have been insuring global trade for hundreds of years. How does a crypto smart contract buy life insurance?
It doesn't buy it directly. Remember Affinet, the fiduciary pillar.
The vault.
Right. Affinet establishes the smart contract trust account, the SCTA. Because it is a legally recognized trust, it can hold complex financial instruments like institutional life insurance policies.
Oh, okay.
To activate a slice of that $100 million master policy for your specific assets, the system requires a fiduciary trigger.
And the trigger is purely mathematical. The notes say you need a minimum capital threshold of exactly $2,500 in sound money, physical gold or silver sitting in the trust account.
Exactly.
The second that $2,500 threshold is crossed, the master insurance coverage snaps into place to protect that specific position.
And here is the genius of algorithmic jurisprudence. Because the JFE ensures everything is legally perfected, the deterministic smart contract itself is legally named as the primary beneficiary of that insurance policy.
Whoa.
The code has a court-enforceable claim to the insurance payout.
Okay, so let's run the disaster scenario.
Right.
I own the silver, it's in the vault. A lessee is using its utility and paying me yield. Suddenly, the lessee completely defaults. They go bankrupt, they miss the payment. What does the smart contract do?
It initiates a hard-coded settlement sequence called the priority waterfall. It is a 4-tier defense system designed to protect the physical gold at all costs.
Tier 1.
Tier 1 is simple. The smart contract first attempts to recover the missed payment through standard channel sweeping late fees or tapping into minor digital reserves the lessee was required to maintain.
But let's say the lessee's accounts are totally empty. Tier 1 completely fails. We move to Tier 2.
In Tier 2, the smart contract completely ignores the defaulting human. It pivots to the institutional insurance policy. It reaches into the policy and initiates a drawdown of the accumulated cash value.
I want to clarify this for anyone listening who doesn't understand whole life insurance. These policies have two buckets of money.
Right.
There is the death benefit, which pays out when someone dies, but there's also a cash value bucket that grows over time and acts as highly liquid collateral. You can borrow against it or draw from it while the insured person is still alive.
Precisely. The smart contract taps that highly liquid cash value bucket to cover the missed lease premiums. It uses the insurance company's liquidity to keep you, the silver owner, perfectly whole. You keep receiving your yield seamlessly.
Okay, but what if the default is catastrophic? What if the cash value is completely drained? We hit Tier 3.
Tier 3 is the heavy artillery. If the cash value is depleted and the position is mathematically insolvent, the system triggers a direct policy death benefit payout from the master $100 million facility.
Wow.
The massive insurance payout cascades down into the trust and is used to immediately execute a full buyout, making all the digital token holders perfectly whole.
And only if Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 entirely fail. Only if Lloyd's of London somehow defaults do we reach Tier 4.
Tier 4 is the last resort. It is the liquidation of the physical goldbacks or silverbacks in the Affinet vault.
The nightmare scenario.
Yeah. But importantly, this step cannot be executed autonomously by a rogue line of code. It requires a heavily governed multi-signature authorization from the human fiduciaries to physically sell the metal.
I really love the analogy we used in prep for this. The priority waterfall is like the emergency protocols on a deep space exploration ship.
Yes, the spaceship analogy.
The physical gold in the vault is the human crew. Your primary engine fails. That's the lessee defaulting. You don't immediately eject the crew into the vacuum of space, which is liquidating the gold.
Right, that would be insane.
You switch to the backup batteries, the cash value. If the batteries die, you trigger the emergency life support reserves, the death benefit payout. You chew through every single layer of redundant safety systems, and you only ever hit the eject button and blow the ship apart if you are out of absolutely all other options. The true must survive.
It is a profound reversal of traditional crypto logic. Crypto liquidates the hard asset instantly to save the software. The JFE liquidates the software and the insurance to save the hard asset.
Okay, let's take a breath. We have built an incredibly dense theoretical machine. We have the legal translation, the bifurcation of utility, and the insurance waterfall.
It's a lot.
But a machine is useless if it doesn't do work in the real world. How does this actually help a normal person? Let's look at the case study from the sources. We need to talk about Brittany Justice.
Brittany Justice provides the perfect lens to see the system in action. She is not a hedge fund manager. She is a working professional who has been a certified nursing assistant for 8 years.
An 8-year CNA.
Right. And through her experience, she identified a critical gap in the healthcare market, specifically surrounding postpartum care. She drafted a business plan called First 6S Full Starts.
The business plan is brilliant.
Yeah.
It focuses on providing in-home healthcare and mobile phlebotomy, drawing blood for lab work for new mothers during the incredibly vulnerable first 6 weeks after birth.
Right.
She recognized that mothers who have had cesarean sections are legally not allowed to drive, making getting to a clinic for necessary lab work incredibly difficult.
And her target demographic is highly strategic. She's focusing initially on military families. When a service member is deployed, the spouse is often left completely isolated, geographically separated from their extended family.
They have no support network at all.
Exactly. Brittany's business provides that critical medical support. Furthermore, because she is targeting military families, the services are fully covered by TRICARE, the federal military insurance program. The revenue stream is federally backed.
It's a rock-solid business model. But to execute it, to get the licensing in Georgia, to buy the mobile equipment, and to integrate with the military healthcare system, she needs seed capital.
Always the hurdle.
She estimates she needs between $100,000 and $200,000 to launch. So if she walks into a traditional commercial bank and asks for $200, what happens?
The bank loan officer looks at her and says, "Great idea, Brittany. Now hand over your personal credit score. Show us 3 years of audited business tax returns."
Which she doesn't have because it's a startup.
Exactly. And finally, please sign this personal guarantee, putting a lien on your personal home so we can foreclose on it if your business fails.
The traditional system looks entirely at your past to judge your future, and it requires you to risk your personal survival to access capital. It's an insurmountable wall for most working-class entrepreneurs.
It really is.
But according to the sources, Brittany is introduced to an advisor named Mr. Bay. And Mr. Bay pitches her a completely different path, funding her business using the Justice Fund Exchange.
Mr. Bay explains that in the sound money ecosystem, capital is not allocated based on personal credit scores or fiat risk models. It is allocated based on algorithmic jurisprudence and perfect collateral.
How does she get the collateral?
To fund Brittany, the system utilizes a specific role called a Lex node operator.
Okay, let's break down the LNO.
A Lex node operator, or LNO, is a bonded, licensed human fiduciary. You can think of them as an independent, decentralized mini bank. They bridge the physical collateral into the digital protocol.
Right.
Let's look at the math provided in the sources. Imagine an LNO who is holding physical custody of 25 of those highly collectible Hades silverbacks in the vault.
Okay, let's do the math on that. At retail value, depending on the silver market and the numismatic premium, let's say those 25 silverbacks are worth between $2,500 and $3,600 each.
Okay.
So the total physical retail value sitting in the vault is roughly $60,000 to $90,000.
Correct. But remember how the priority waterfall utilizes life insurance? When those 25 silverbacks are locked into the JFE trust architecture, they act as the fiduciary trigger.
The $2,500 threshold.
Exactly. They activate a massive tranche of that Lloyd's of London master policy. The sources indicate that under this specific algorithmic protocol, a single Hades silverback can secure roughly $36,000 in policy coverage value.
Okay, wait, stop right there. You were telling me that an asset worth roughly $3,000 retail can unlock $36,000 in value.
Yes.
25 silverbacks worth maybe $90,000, multiply it to $900,000 in algorithmic policy value.
That is the math.
I have to ask you to explain that to me, because that sounds exactly like the fiat fractional reserve money printing we were just trashing 10 minutes ago. How is a 10x multiplier not a scam?
I am very glad you challenged that, because it is the most counterintuitive part of the system, and it requires understanding the difference between cash and coverage.
Okay, lay it on me.
The system is not magically printing $900,000 in liquid cash out of thin air.
Okay, then what is that $900,000?
It is the mathematical ceiling of the insurance death benefit that is legally bound to the trust. Think about how life insurance works in the real world. A healthy 30-year-old can pay a premium of maybe $1,000 a year, and in exchange, the insurance company grants them a $1 million death benefit policy.
Right.
The insurance company isn't handing them $1 million in cash. They are providing a $1 million legal guarantee based on actuarial math.
Okay, I see. So the $900,000 isn't a pile of cash the LNO can just go spend on a yacht. It is the size of the legal safety net.
Precisely. By utilizing the physical silver to secure that massive $900,000 insurance envelope, the LNO creates a perfectly secure, mathematically over-collateralized environment.
Got it.
They then file UCC-1 statements against that insured value. Because the safety net is so massive, $900,000, the ACF protocol can safely, mathematically issue the $200,000 in digital liquid yield that Brittany actually needs for her business.
Because it's fully backed by the policy.
Exactly. The loan is entirely swallowed by the insurance coverage. Brittany's personal credit score is irrelevant because the risk is borne by the algorithmic interaction between the silver and the Lloyd's policy.
That completely flips lending upside down. The collateral isn't Brittany's house. The collateral is the mathematically perfect interaction between ancient silver and institutional insurance.
Right.
But to operate in this system, Mr. Bay points out that Brittany has to completely rewire how she thinks about money. He uses what he calls the grocery store purchasing power analogy to explain the difference between price and value.
It is a vital mindset shift. In the fiat system, we are trained to obsess over nominal price. But Mr. Bay asks Brittany to run a thought experiment. Assume the true historical purchasing power of a 1-ounce silver coin is $100.
Okay, so let's hold a 1-ounce American silver eagle coin in one hand. Stamped on the metal, the U.S. government has literally written $1. It is technically legal tender for one single dollar.
Right.
In the other hand, you hold a paper $1 Federal Reserve note. In the traditional banking system, a dollar is a dollar. They are nominally equal.
But look at the actual utility in a grocery store. If gasoline costs $3.70 a gallon, what does your paper dollar buy? It buys roughly a quarter of a gallon. You barely get enough gas to pull out of the parking lot.
But if you use the intrinsic metallic value of that silver eagle, which the market values at roughly $100, that single silver dollar buys you 27 gallons of gas, or it buys you 25 gallons of milk, or 50 dozen eggs.
Yeah.
The paper dollar buys a fraction of a single item. The silver dollar fills the back of your SUV with groceries.
The paper dollar is the melting ice cube. It requires more and more units of paper every single year to buy the exact same gallon of milk.
Right.
The silver coin is the diamond. Its purchasing power remains stable and mathematically increases relative to the collapsing fiat currency. Mr. Bay emphasizes that until an entrepreneur stops thinking in fiat prices and starts thinking in sound money purchasing power, they cannot effectively utilize the Justice Fund exchange.
But here's the reality check. Theoretical math and beautiful silver coins are great. But if Brittany is trying to buy medical supplies in Georgia, she can't exactly hand a silver coin to a medical supply distributor.
No, she can't.
For this system to actually work at a grassroots level, there has to be incredibly efficient logistical infrastructure.
Which is the final component of the ecosystem. The sources detail the physical and digital infrastructure built to make this usable. We are talking about the Universal Precious Metals Account, or UPMA, platforms like the Sound Money Wallet and the Alpine Gold Exchange.
And to really illustrate why this infrastructure is a lifesaver, the sources include this unbelievable anecdote. I call it the minivan story.
Oh, this story is wild. It perfectly encapsulates the nightmare of physical logistics. A couple drove an aging minivan from Chicago, Illinois, all the way across the country to a specialized vaulting facility in Idaho.
And this wasn't just a scenic road trip. The minivan pulled into the facility literally riding on its axles. The suspension was completely destroyed because they were carrying 40,000 ounces of physical silver in the back.
4 tons.
That is roughly 4 tons of metal. It's worth around $7 million.
The vault operators were totally stunned. They asked the couple why they risked driving 4 tons of unprotected wealth across the interstate in a broken minivan.
I mean, they could have been robbed.
Easily. But their answer highlights the exact bottleneck of traditional stacking. They had been aggressively accumulating this silver since 1987. Their goal was to pass generational wealth down to their posterity.
Right.
But when they reached a point where they wanted to liquidate or distribute portions of it in Chicago, the local infrastructure completely failed them. Local pawn shops and coin dealers simply could not absorb a $7 million transaction.
And if they wanted to just store it in a traditional high-security commercial vault in Chicago, they were facing extortionate recurring fees.
Oh, the fees are brutal.
The industry standard for vaulting precious metals is around 50 basis points a year. Let's clarify basis points for everyone. That means half of 1% of the total value. So 0.5% of $7 million is $35,000. They would be bleeding out $35,000 every single year just to keep their silver in a dark room. It is a slow, agonizing drain on their generational wealth.
But by driving it to this specific sound money ecosystem in Idaho, they accessed a completely different economic model. Upon depositing the metal into the UPMA system, they opted to pay a one-time upfront 15% metal fee.
Which honestly sounds really high at first.
It does until you run the long-term math. By paying that single upfront fee, they secured infinite lifetime free storage in a state-of-the-art robotic vault and infinite lifetime free coverage under the Lloyd's of London insurance policy. No more recurring annual fees eating their legacy.
And the distribution problem is instantly solved. Because that metal is now integrated into the digital ecosystem, they don't have to invite their grandkids over and hand them heavy silver bars that they can't even spend.
Right.
The couple can just open the Sound Money Wallet app on their phones and instantly digitally gift microscopic fractions of that silver directly into the accounts of their posterity.
Technology is democratizing access to institutional grade security. Traditionally, only a sovereign nation or a billionaire could afford to securely vault and insure 4 tons of metal.
Yeah.
But by utilizing robotic vaulting facilities where human hands rarely enter the storage floor, which drastically reduces insurance premiums, and combining it with digital ledger technology, the barrier to entry is crushed.
It's like having a magical, frictionless pipeline. You have a robotic fortress buried in the mountains of Idaho, but it is piped directly into the smartphone in your pocket.
Exactly.
And you can actually use it for daily life through tools like the TrueLink card.
The TrueLink card is the ultimate bridge to the fiat world. It functions exactly like a standard Visa or MasterCard debit card at the point of sale, but it doesn't draw from a melting ice cube of fiat currency.
No.
It draws directly from your precious metals balance in the vault.
So I can walk into a coffee shop, swipe the card, and behind the scenes, the system instantly liquidates a microscopic fraction of a silver coin at the exact real-time market price to pay for my latte.
Well,
I stay in the diamond until the exact millisecond I need to transact in the melting ice cube. The sources even talk about how active users manage their UPMA accounts to capture daily profits, moving wealth back and forth between gold and silver to play the volatility spread.
yeah, they are turning static sound money into a highly dynamic checking account.
Wow.
Furthermore, the Alpine Gold Exchange offers an authorized partner program structured into tiers like advocate, affiliate, and ambassador. This allows everyday users to onboard new people into the ecosystem and earn commissions.
Oh, that's smart.
And crucially, those commissions are not paid out in depreciating fiat currency. They are paid directly in sound money, Goldbacks deposited straight into their UPMA vaults. It creates a self-sustaining, rapidly expanding parallel economy.
Okay, let's zoom out and take a breath,
Yeah.
because we have covered an absolute mountain of complex material today.
We really have. We started by identifying the mathematically guaranteed failure of fiat currency as a long-term store of value, the melting ice cube. We saw how tokenized gold, secured by strict legal bailment rather than general creditor status, creates a frictionless 247 alternative.
Then we tackled the legal nightmare. We saw how the Justice Fund Exchange uses algorithmic jurisprudence and the tri-pillar system, the notary, the compliance engine, and the vault, to force smart contracts to obey real-world commercial law.
Yep.
We decoded the Aureum Custodia finance protocol, learning how bifurcating a silver coin allows you to lease its economic utility to generate liquid yield.
And we stress tested the math, exploring how the mintable value buffer and the $100 million priority waterfall ruthlessly protect the physical collateral by chewing through life insurance policies instead of liquidating the asset.
The spaceship.
Exactly. And we watched that theoretical math fund a real-world postpartum healthcare business for Brittany Justice, completely bypassing the traditional banking sector.
Finally, we looked at the physical infrastructure, the robotic vaults, the UPMA accounts, and the TrueLink cards that make this available to a couple with a broken minivan or an entrepreneur with a smartphone. It is a staggering, comprehensive reimagining of how wealth can be stored and deployed.
And as we conclude, I think it is vital to extrapolate this technology beyond individual users.
Right. We have been focusing on individuals and small businesses.
Mm-hmm.
But what happens if we apply this to a macro scale? Think about your local city government or municipality.
Oh, man.
Right now, local governments are trapped in a vicious cycle. They are drowning in fiat-denominated debt, their tax bases are often shrinking, and they are constantly begging Wall Street to underwrite expensive municipal bonds just to fix potholes or keep the water running.
But municipalities sit on massive tangible assets. They own vast tracts of land, utility infrastructure, administrative buildings.
So what happens when a city council wakes up and realizes they don't need Wall Street? What if a struggling city tokenizes its municipal assets, locks them into the JFE framework, secures them with the master insurance policies, and begins issuing their own digital yield to fund city services?
Wow.
What if they transition their entire municipal treasury onto a sound money standard?
If algorithmic jurisprudence and physical gold can successfully replace the lending, safeguarding, and yield-generating functions of a commercial bank for a small business owner, there is no mathematical reason it cannot replace the financial function of a local government.
The city could effectively become its own decentralized, gold-backed, cryptographically secure bank. It sounds like science fiction. But based on the literal code, the perfected legal structures, and the robotic vaults we've decoded today, all the pieces already exist. It's no longer a question of if the technology works, it's a question of who realizes it first. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope we've given you a massive amount to think about. Keep questioning the financial architecture around you, and most importantly, keep a very close eye on the exact nature of that melting ice cube in your pocket. We will catch you next time.
Imagine checking your banking app after closing this just like massive career-defining deal.
Oh, yeah. The dream scenario.
Right. You're fully expecting to see a direct deposit of over $163,000 just sitting right there in your checking account.
Naturally.
But instead, you find out your payment isn't in dollars at all.
Oh.
It's sitting in a heavily armed robotic vault, and it has been paid to you entirely in physical gold.
Which is quite the shock for most people.
Totally. So today, we're going to find out why that scenario is not just real, but quite possibly, the absolute best thing that could ever happen to your money.
It really is. I mean, it completely shatters the standard operating procedure for how we conduct business.
Yeah.
We are so accustomed to wealth just being temporary digits on a screen,
Just numbers.
Right. So when you introduce a system that fundamentally redefines what the money actually is, well, it requires a total paradigm shift.
It does. Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are analyzing an incredibly fascinating ecosystem.
Super fascinating.
And we have a really specific mission for you today. We are going to unpack a massive hypothetical financial transaction from the Alpine Gold Authorized Partner Agreement.
A big one.
Yeah. We are going to calculate to the penny exactly what you would earn selling a highly specific asset called, what are they called? Florida Goldback boxes?
Right. Florida Goldback boxes.
But more importantly, we're going to explore this cutting edge, sound money infrastructure where these earnings actually live.
Which is where things get truly interesting, honestly.
Yeah.
Because to understand the ecosystem,
yeah,
You first have to understand the sheer scale of the transaction that gets you through the door in the first place.
Right.
We need to look at the blueprint of the deal.
Exactly. So let's look at the hypothetical scenario outlined in our sources.
Let's do it.
To calculate your exact earnings, we first have to determine your total sales volume.
Right.
Really. And then we apply the authorized partner commission tier structure.
Correct. For our Goldback net sales.
Right. And this structure, it scales based on a rolling 12-month total of commissions you've already earned.
Yeah. But for this specific scenario,
we're assuming you're starting fresh.
Right. 0 prior commissions.
0. So you have brought in 10 clients.
Okay.
And each of those 10 clients is buying 10 boxes of Florida Goldbacks.
So that is 100 boxes sold in total.
Right. 100 boxes. And the pricing on these boxes is like very specific in the source material.
Oh, down to the cent. According to the data, each Florida Goldback box is priced at exactly $55,278.54.
Wait, okay. 55,000. Let me just do the math on that really quick.
It's a big number.
So if I'm selling 100 boxes at over 55 grand each, that brings the total sales volume of this single referral to $5,527,854.
Yep. $5,527,854.
Yeah. $5,527,854.
That is an absolute monster of a transaction.
It really is. So how does a commission structure even handle a leap that big for someone who is literally just starting at 0?
Well, because the transaction is so massively large, you don't just sit in one commission bracket.
Okay.
Your earnings are going to blast progressively through all 3 of the available commission tiers in a single go.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. And because you're dealing in Goldbacks, the commission rates are calculated in basis points.
Which people usually just call BP, right?
Exactly. BP. And for context, 100 basis points is equal to exactly 1%.
Okay, got it. So walk us through what happens to that $5.5 million as it hits the actual tier system.
Sure. So the system starts you at tier 1, which is the advocate tier.
Advocate, okay.
Right. This pays 200 basis points or 2%.
Okay.
Now, this tier covers your first $3,000 in earned commissions.
So to hit that.
To generate that $3,000 commission at a 2% rate, the system needs to process $150,000 in sales.
Oh, I see. So out of your massive $5.5 million total, the first $150,000 is basically siphoned off here.
Yep.
Exactly. Siphoned off, and that earns you your initial $3,000.
But I mean, that barely makes a dent in the total sales volume.
Not even close.
We still have over 5.3 million left to process.
Right, which instantly pushes you into tier 2.
Okay.
The affiliate tier.
Affiliate.
This one pays 250 basis points, which is 2.5%.
Nice little bump.
Yeah. And tier 2 covers your earnings from $3,001 up to $5,500.
Okay, so we're looking for an additional $2,500 in commission here.
Spot on. And to earn that $2,500 at the 2.5% rate, the system processes another $100,000 in sales.
Okay, let me make sure I'm following the math. So we've processed $150,000 in tier 1,
right,
and $100,000 in tier 2.
Correct.
So we have accounted for $250,000 of total sales, and you have earned $5,500 in commission so far.
Yep.
But we still have like an absolute ocean of sales volume left over.
And that ocean just pours directly into tier 3.
Okay.
The ambassador tier.
Ambassador.
Right. And this one pays 300 basis points or 3%. And the key here is this tier has no cap.
No cap at all. It covers all commissions earned over that $5,500 threshold.
Wow. Okay. So we take your total sales of $5,527,854. We subtract the $250,000 we've already processed in the first 2 tiers.
Exactly.
And we are left with a remaining balance of $5,277,854.
Yep. $5,277,854.
And all of that remaining $5.2 million gets hit with the 3% ambassador rate.
Every single penny of it.
That is wild.
At 3%, that massive remaining balance generates a cool $158,335.62 in commission.
This is honestly, it's like leveling up in a video game.
That's a great way to put it.
Because of the sheer size of the transaction, you basically just speed run through those lower entry level tiers.
Really in milliseconds.
Right. You unlock the maximum ambassador multiplier for the vast majority of the boss fight, basically.
Exactly.
So adding it all together, let's see. The $3,000 from tier 1.
Right.
The $2,500 from tier 2.
Yep.
And the $158,335.62 from tier 3.
Drum roll.
Your grand total commission on this single referral is exactly $163,835.62.
Boom. It is a phenomenal yield.
Unbelievable.
But, the calculation is really only the beginning of the story here.
Right.
The truly disruptive element of this agreement is how that wealth is actually delivered to you.
Because as we said at the top, I am not getting a wire transfer to my local credit union.
You certainly are not.
Right.
These net sales commissions, they're paid directly into a UPMA account.
That's the United Precious Metals Association, right?
Exactly. UPMA. And they are paid out entirely in the form of physical goldbacks.
Goldbacks.
Yeah. And there's a very rigid, highly predictable schedule for this, too.
Okay. How does that work?
Well, net sales commissions from the 1st through the 15th of the month are paid out on the 20th.
Okay.
And sales from the 16th to the end of the month are paid out on the 5th of the following month.
Got it. So twice a month. But I have to ask the obvious question here. Why go through all of this infrastructure to pay me twice a month in physical gold? I mean, why not just wire the US dollars and be done with it?
It's the logical question. But to really grasp the why behind this, we need to look at the research of Dr. Campbell Harvey.
Right. He's the finance professor at Duke University.
Yeah, exactly. And he extensively studies what we call sound money.
Sound money.
Yeah. See, the core issue with fiat currency, like, the paper US dollars we use every day,
right,
is that it's structurally designed to lose value over time due to inflation.
It leaks value?
Constantly. It's essentially an invisible, continuous tax on your purchasing power.
Yeah.
But gold, both historically and mechanically, it operates entirely differently.
How so?
It is an enduring store of value.
Enduring is a great word for it, but I mean, how enduring are we actually talking about here?
Well, Dr. Harvey's research highlights a truly staggering historical data point.
Okay, I love these.
He looked back roughly 2.5 millennia.
Wow.
To the era of Nebuchadnezzar.
Okay, ancient Babylon.
Right. And he found historical records detailing the exact cost of a loaf of bread priced at a very specific weight of gold.
A 2,000-year-old loaf of bread.
Basically. Now, if you take that exact same weight of gold today, right now, it is worth about $7.
Wait, really? Which, if you walk into like a local artisanal bakery today, is exactly what you are paying for a high-quality loaf of bread.
Exactly.
That's crazy.
Think about the implications of that.
Yeah.
Through 2,500 years of human history.
Through like the collapse of entire empires.
World wars.
Countless global economic depressions.
Yes. Through all of that, that specific weight of gold has maintained its exact purchasing power.
It hasn't flinched. You know, there was another analogy in the sources that really hammered this home for me.
Oh, the gas one?
Yes. It compared a standard paper Federal Reserve note, like just a standard $1 bill, to a physical silver dollar coin.
Right. A great comparison.
So a paper dollar today might buy you, what, a fraction of a gallon of gas?
Yeah, barely a splash.
Right. If gas is sitting at $3.70 a gallon, that paper bill gets you maybe a quarter of a gallon. You can barely make it out of your neighborhood.
Exactly. But the silver contained within a traditional silver dollar, that is worth roughly $100 on the exchange today.
Wow.
So if you utilize the actual sound money value of that coin, it possesses the buying power of about 27 gallons of gas.
27 gallons. So the paper dollar leaves you stranded, and the silver dollar fills up your entire SUV.
Perfectly said.
Okay, but look, I'm going to play devil's advocate here for a second.
Please do.
Because I hear the history. The Nebuchadnezzar bread example is mind-blowing.
It is.
And the gas analogy makes total sense. But we live in the real world.
Sure.
My mortgage is due in US dollars. My car payment, my groceries, my electricity bill, they all demand regular fiat currency.
They do.
So doesn't locking my $163,000 commission in physical gold just create like a massive administrative headache for my daily life?
You know, that is a very common friction point, but it requires looking at wealth as stored energy.
Stored energy.
Yeah. Think about it. When you work, you are expending your time and energy.
Right.
If you store the financial result of that energy in fiat currency, the system mathematically drains that energy away year after year.
Because of inflation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So holding your wealth in sound money is about erecting a firewall around your labor.
The firewall. I like that.
It breaks the monopoly of fiat currency.
Yeah.
Yes, you might need to convert small amounts back to fiat to pay a specific bill today, but the principal amount, your core wealth, is protected from degradation.
Okay, I see.
And as this ecosystem matures, The friction of conversion is just disappearing entirely.
Which actually brings us to the physical reality of the situation. Because if my commission is paid in goldbacks, what does that actually look like?
Good question.
Am I supposed to like rent a heavy duty truck, pick up a crate of gold, and literally bury it in my backyard? Because that feels incredibly archaic.
It would be. Which is exactly why this ecosystem fuses ancient assets with cutting-edge digital infrastructure.
Okay, how?
Well, you utilize platforms like the Sound Money Wallet.
The Sound Money Wallet.
Right. This technology allows for fractional ownership.
Okay.
You aren't forced to transact in whole, heavy bars of gold. The digital tokens that represent your physical gold are highly divisible.
How divisible?
Down to 18 decimal places.
18 decimal places. Wait, so if I just wanted to buy a cup of coffee, I could instantly transact a microscopic fraction of my gold reserve.
You absolutely could.
That's insane.
And if you ever decide you actually want physical possession of your wealth, the system accommodates that without you ever needing to, visit a vault.
Oh, really?
Yeah. You can request physical delivery right through the app.
Just like ordering a pizza.
Pretty much. And a highly secure robotic facility will pull your specific gold, package it, and send it via FedEx directly to your front door.
Wait, robotic?
Completely. A human hand never even touches it during the fulfillment process.
That is wild. And the fact that it's entirely automated and built on digital ledger technology, that means it's always running, right? Because traditional banks close at 5 p.m. on a Friday.
Which is a critical vulnerability of traditional finance.
Huge vulnerability.
Right. So the traditional primary market for trading metals is the COMEX.
Okay.
But it operates on legacy banking hours. And Dr. Harvey pointed out a recent glaring example of why this matters.
What happened?
So during the geopolitical tensions surrounding the weekend military strikes on Iran, global anxiety obviously spiked.
Of course.
Investors wanted to move their capital into safe haven assets like gold.
Makes sense.
But the COMEX was closed for the weekend.
Oh, wow. So they were just stuck.
Completely frozen. Traditional investors were locked out of their own wealth until Monday morning.
But the tokenized gold markets never close.
Exactly. They were trading 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Wow.
Investors in the Sound Money ecosystem were able to maneuver and secure their assets in real time on a Saturday night.
That's a huge advantage.
It gets better. The decentralized markets were actually functioning so efficiently that their weekend price movements accurately predicted exactly where the COMEX would open on Monday morning.
That is incredible. All right, but look, I have a massive glaring concern with all of this.
Let's hear it.
If I am trading my physical gold for a digital token on an app, aren't I basically just trusting another crypto exchange?
Ah, the crypto fear.
Right, because we have all seen the documentaries.
We have.
High-flying exchanges go bankrupt overnight, the founders disappear or go to jail, and the users open their apps to find out their life savings are just gone.
It's a nightmare scenario.
In a traditional bankruptcy, you're just like a number on a spreadsheet of unsecured creditors hoping to get pennies back. So how is this any different?
It is a completely valid fear, and it is the exact reason why this specific ecosystem is built around a bedrock legal principle.
Okay, what's it called?
It's called bailment.
Bailment. Okay, we need an I'm 5 for that because it sounds like very dense legalese.
Fair enough. Let's use an analogy. Imagine you go to a fancy restaurant and you hand your expensive jacket to the coat check attendant.
Okay.
They give you a ticket. Now, if that restaurant suddenly goes completely bankrupt while you're eating dinner, the bank cannot seize your jacket to pay off the restaurant's debts.
Because it's my jacket.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Own the jacket. The restaurant was merely storing it for you.
Okay, I track with that.
That is bailment. Now, contrast that with depositing money in a normal bank.
Right.
When you give a bank your money, you are legally loaning it to them.
Oh, interesting.
You become an unsecured creditor. So if the bank fails, your money is tied up in their failure.
So how does bailment apply to like a digital token representing my gold?
Well, Dr. Harvey uses the Paxos token as a prime example of this done correctly.
Okay.
With proper bailment in the Sound Money ecosystem, your digital token isn't an IOU from the tech company.
Okay, so what is it?
The token represents a specific physical gold bar sitting in a Brinks vault, and it has a specific serial number attached to it.
Oh, wow.
You own that bar. So if the app company goes entirely bankrupt tomorrow, that gold bar is still legally, undeniably yours.
It's insulated.
Completely isolated from their corporate risk.
That is profound. I mean, you get the lightning fast speed of crypto, but you retain the bulletproof property rights of physical real world assets.
Best of both worlds.
So we've established that your $163,000 commission is secure, it's inflation proof, and accessible 24/7.
Yes.
But if we stop there, I feel like we are missing the most dynamic part of this deep dive.
We definitely would be.
Because this ecosystem doesn't just store your wealth, right? It actively compounds it.
Yeah.
I want to talk about the residual bonus.
Ah, yes. This is where the ecosystem really rewards the network effect.
Right.
Because you referred 10 clients who are now operating heavily funded UPMA accounts. Your earning potential doesn't just end with that initial commission check.
It keeps going.
You generate a recurring funded member commission.
And the math on this is really interesting in the sources. You basically earn 10 gold cents per month.
Right.
Which breaks down to 1 gold cent per member per month for your 10 clients.
Correct.
And this residual bonus is paid out quarterly for as long as those clients maintain a balance equivalent to $1 gold dollar.
It is continuous passive yield.
I love passive yield.
Who doesn't? But the architecture of this ecosystem allows for even more sophisticated wealth generation on a macro level.
Okay, how so?
This requires looking at the Justice Fund Exchange, or the JFE,
Okay.
and the Aureum Custodia Finance Protocol, the ACF.
Okay, those are some very heavy acronyms. We need to break down exactly what the JFE and the ACF actually do.
Sure.
Because how does a piece of physical gold just sitting silently in a dark vault somewhere actively generate a yield?
Right, because it solves one of the oldest paradoxes in banking.
Which is?
To keep a high-value physical asset safe, you have to lock it behind a massive steel door.
Right.
But the moment you lock it away, you destroy its economic liquidity. You can't use it to generate momentum.
It's just sitting there.
Exactly. Now, the early crypto industry tried to solve this by tokenizing real-world assets, but they crashed into a massive legal wall.
What happened?
Well, if someone defaults on a purely digital smart contract, a digital token holds absolutely zero weight in a physical courtroom.
Oh, because a real world judge cannot seize digital code?
Exactly.
The legal system basically looks at the blockchain and just shrugs its shoulders. There's no real world enforcement.
You nailed it. So the Justice Fund Exchange bridges that chasm using a doctrine they call algorithmic jurisprudence.
Algorithmic jurisprudence, again, sounds incredibly sci-fi.
It does.
What does that actually mean in practice?
Basically, it means we are teaching digital code to obey real-world commercial law.
Oh, wow. Okay.
For example, there is a legal concept called perfection of title.
Perfection of title.
In simple terms, perfection of title means making sure the legal system officially and undeniably recognizes you as the true owner of an asset.
So no one else can claim it.
Exactly. Algorithmic jurisprudence takes legal requirements like perfection of title and codes them directly into deterministic smart contracts.
Meaning the smart contract isn't just like a rogue piece of code. It is legally binding from the second it executes.
Precisely. And that legal foundation is what empowers the ACF protocol to offer its central feature,
Which is?
the synthetic leaseback instrument.
Yeah.
Or the SLBI.
Okay, the SLBI.
Right. And the SLBI does something brilliant. It separates the physical ownership of the gold from its economic utility.
Interesting.
So the physical goldbacks remain perfectly secure in a vault managed by a fiduciary.
Right.
Meanwhile, the economic utility of that gold is leased out digitally to generate continuous liquid income on the blockchain.
Wait, I think I have an analogy for this.
Let's hear.
It is basically like owning a commercial warehouse.
Okay.
You never sell the physical building. You hold the deed, it's fully yours, and it obviously isn't going anywhere.
Right.
But you constantly collect rent on the empty space inside the building. So in this ecosystem, the heavy steel vault protects the physical building, while the SLBI acts as your digital property manager, right? Leasing out the utility of the gold and collecting the rent for you.
That is a perfect way to visualize it.
Yeah.
You maintain the security of the asset while simultaneously harnessing its momentum.
That's brilliant.
But naturally, that introduces a glaring risk factor.
Oh, of course.
Why should a deterministic smart contract trust that the human being leasing that utility is actually going to keep paying their premiums?
Right. Because standard financial lending relies on human creditworthiness, and we all know human creditworthiness fails constantly.
All the time.
People default. So what happens if the digital tenant stops paying the rent? Does the whole ecosystem trigger a financial domino effect where the investor takes the loss?
No. And to prevent that exact domino effect, the system entirely removes human creditworthiness from the equation.
How do you do that?
It relies instead on a massive, $100 million master life insurance policy underwritten by Lloyd's of London.
Wait, life insurance. How does a smart contract trigger a life insurance policy to cover a missed lease payment? Walk us through the mechanics of how this system actually absorbs a default.
Okay, it utilizes what algorithmic jurisprudence calls a priority waterfall.
Priority waterfall.
It is a strict 4-tier mechanical defense system.
Okay, 4 tiers.
Right. The smart contract actively monitors the payment wallets. If a payment is missed, Tier 1 is triggered.
And what's tier 1?
The smart contract autonomously attempts to recover the funds through standard lease premium income from the network.
Okay, so just standard recovery.
Exactly.
But what if that wallet is just completely empty?
Then the code instantly escalates to Tier 2.
Okay.
Without requiring any human intervention or approval, the protocol bypasses the defaulting party entirely.
Wow.
It interfaces with that $100 million master life insurance policy and initiates a cash value drawdown.
A drawdown.
Right. It legally pulls liquidity directly from the insurance policy to cover the missed payment and make the investor whole.
That is incredible. The code just reaches into the insurance policy on its own.
Completely autonomously.
But what if we encounter like a catastrophic scenario where that cash value isn't enough to cover the default?
Then the smart contract escalates to Tier 3.
That's okay, tier 3.
The system routes a direct policy death benefit payout from the master facility down into the trust.
Wow.
The liquidity there is overwhelmingly massive by design.
And what about the physical gold itself, the actual Goldbacks sitting in the vault?
That is Tier 4.
Oh, the final tier.
Exactly. Only as a heavily governed, multi-signature last resort will the protocol ever liquidate the physically custodied Goldbacks.
So they are incredibly protected.
Yes. The algorithmic jurisprudence is explicitly coded to force the system to consume all of those softer insurance layers before it is legally permitted to touch your physical collateral.
That's amazing. Your core wealth is basically insulated behind millions of dollars of institutional insurance.
Exactly right.
Wow. So to summarize this entire journey we've been on,
It's been a journey.
we started with a math problem.
We do.
We took a hypothetical referral selling 100 boxes of Florida Goldbacks, and we walked through the tier system to calculate a massive commission check of $163,835.62.
Right. But as we explored the ecosystem, we realized that this transaction isn't just about a payout.
Exactly.
It is about a fundamental transition in how wealth is held.
Right. It isn't just a check to cash. It is an entry ticket into a highly sophisticated 24/7 financial ecosystem.
It really is.
You are stepping into a world of sound money that doesn't just silently inflate away your purchasing power.
No.
Your wealth is protected by the strict legal property rights of bailment. It's governed by algorithmic jurisprudence, and it's actively generating passive income through residual yields and synthetic leases.
It's a profound evolution. I mean, it takes the oldest, most historically resilient asset humanity has ever known and supercharges it with the most advanced digital infrastructure available today.
Unbelievable. But before we sign off today, we do want to leave you with one final, deeply provocative thought from Dr. Harvey's research to just, mull over.
Oh, this is a good one.
Because we have spent this entire deep dive establishing that physical tokenized gold is historically stable.
Right.
It is the ultimate standard of wealth, surviving empires and depressions alike.
But we have to look forward.
Exactly.
What happens to the underlying value of those massive commissions when we encounter unprecedented technological supply shocks in the future?
Seriously, think about the horizon of human science. What happens to the price and the fundamental scarcity of gold when humanity inevitably figures out how to economically mine near-Earth asteroids?
Asteroids which are potentially loaded with millions of tons of precious metals, by the way.
Right. Or even wilder. What happens when advanced nuclear fusion allows us to alter the atomic structure of a base metal like mercury to literally manufacture gold in a laboratory?
It's a crazy thought. If the total supply of gold suddenly becomes virtually infinite due to a technological leap,
Yeah.
how bulletproof is this ancient concept of sound money against the relentless march of future science?
It is a fascinating question, and one that proves the landscape of wealth, no matter how ancient the asset, is always evolving.
That is.
So keep questioning the systems around you, keep learning, and keep diving deep.